It's Canada's story in Afghanistan from the most reliable source, the soldiers who actually fought there. Captain Susan McGill and retired Lieutenant Melanie Graham have been coordinating this daunting project since 2010. They join us in this studio. Welcome to the show. All right, I'll start with you, Lieutenant Graham. Where did this idea come from? Who came up with this?
We actually came up with it together. We were both deployed with the Olympics in 2010, and we were tasked by our separate commands to come up with a daily newsletter in addition to our regular workload. So rather than going out and becoming reporters, we got the folks deployed with us to start sending us stories and photographs. And we observed at one point that there really ought to be something like this for Afghanistan. And then we worked out the fine details, Susan and I, in my basement when we were back in Edmonton.
So, Captain McGill, was it hard to convince soldiers to tell their story? Because, you know, this is a deeply personal thing to a lot of them. It
is. There's two things to take into consideration. First, a lot of members didn't recognize what a story was, the value of a story. So they might have had one, they didn't know about it. And yes, a lot of the stories are very personal. I think almost everybody who's been to Afghanistan has come home with something extra that they didn't have when they went there. You know, sometimes they're lighter things and sometimes they're darker things, but they're very personal. So it's hard to get them to share those, but it's also very important because sometimes it's good to get them out and share them in a manner like this.
Do they get into how they coped with Afghanistan? Do you get into the post-traumatic stress disorder at all, or is that something that this is actual combat as opposed to the effects of that?
This is more what actually occurred while you were there, but I think for a lot of people that have carried that, you know, because we're covering 12 years, somebody might have been there in the first year, and it might have taken them 10 years courage to tell that story.
Amazing.
To interject, one of the soldiers was advised by a psychologist to write his story for the book because it would be so healing.
Oh, really? Do you have a favorite in the book? I hate to put you on the spot like that, but is there one story that just jumps out and says you got to read this?
All of them. We've spent 4 years reviewing and editing. We've retained the original flavor and simply corrected for punctuation and spelling, and we've been so moved by all of them, and they're so different. And it's from soldiers, it's from anyone in the armed forces, but it's also the RCMP, municipal police. We've got an Ottawa police sergeant who has his story in there. Corrections Canada contributed some embedded media, one parent of a fallen soldier, and one parent of a soldier that she thought he might have been killed when there was a casualty, and it was her reaction to not knowing. So it's very much, as Susan calls it, a quilt of stories.
Well, Susan, when I was over there, we had to make sure our stories didn't reveal anything to do with military secrets or anything like that. We had to be very careful what we wrote. Was this something the military had to have a look at before you published it, or you knew the boundaries going in?
Both Millie and I were or are still functioning public affairs officers, so we've been trained to tell the soldier story, you know, the Canadian Armed Forces. So more than anyone else, we're aware of the limitations and what we can and cannot work with. And as well, everything had to, you know, of course, be checked and vetted. While it was at the books level with its group of volunteers, as well, it's not just Emily and I, it's quite a large group that work on this. And there's other public affairs officers as well. So it's a whole team of people that went through and worked on it and checked everything and helped put the entire book together.
I know we're heading into probably the most emotional Remembrance Day for a long time. I'm sure this will sell quite well. Could you tell us a bit about who receives the proceeds from it, Melanie?
The Edmonton MFRC, or Military Family Resource Centre, owns the book, and they are going to be sharing the net proceeds with several military charities like the Military Families Fund, the Soldier On Fund, the Boomers Legacy Foundation, and there's a Veterans Hospital that will also be receiving some of the benefit from it.
Great project, great causes. Thank you both for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is your day in Canadian politics. Thanks for tuning in. Todd Vanderheyden is up next with the latest news headlines. For the Power Play team, I'm Don Martin. Hope you can join us again tomorrow, right here on CTV News Channel.